Good Tuesday evening, high school sports fans. Joe Gillaway with Lingelstown Gazette Sports live from the Orchard Street studio. And this is episode number 2 of our new podcast, Gazette Sports Chat, where we'll get to know participants from various realms of the high school sports world. The student athletes who play the games, the coaches who coach them, and others who contribute in different ways to the entire experience. I'll introduce tonight's guest in just a moment, as soon as we're done thanking those responsible for bringing you tonight's show, our Lingelstown Gazette Sports Platinum sponsors. And they are Rickabah's Electric, Capital Region Insurance Agency, Payer Apparel, Tonino's Pizza, The Tire Mart, Hoffman Ford, Ted's Bar and Grill, Modern Imprint, Sam Hartley Decking, Freedom Financial Wealth Management, Hershey Abstract Settlement Services, Lingelstown American Legion Post 272, where we'll be doing a show here just in a couple weeks, I guess a few weeks from now. Underdog Sports Bar and Grill, Crystal Bob at Howard Hanna Real Estate, and Team PA AAU Basketball. Thanks to all those great local businesses for their continued support of Lingelstown Gazette Sports and our area student athletes. Incidentally, speaking of sponsors, we're always looking for sponsors. And the upcoming 2024-2025 school year is just about upon us here, and that's when we kind of get started. We start in the middle of August with a couple preseason football shows, and then we just keep on rolling, and we work throughout the summer too. So when sports and high school sports are, like they call it, dark or not being played, we continue to bring you high school sports news. Also, we could always use another intern or two, and these could be student interns, these could be adult interns. We are all volunteers, but we all have a lot of fun. So if you think you may enjoy helping us cover high school sports, please let me know. Upcoming on Gazette Sports Chat, we're going to do a show on eligibility, recruiting, and transfers in high school sports. And we have some really good guests going to help us with that show. Eric Thomas, we have him coming in to help us, along with Aaron Blanding. Last I knew, he was an assistant football coach down in Middletown. He was the head football coach at East High up until a few years ago, along with the girls basketball coach there and the lacrosse coach. And we are sourcing Aliquippa, I guess, on pause, head coach Mike Warfield. Maybe we could talk about that, Luke. I don't know what to say. What the article that I read said he's kind of stepping aside for a while. There's kind of somebody filling his shoes, but if we could get Mike Warfield for that show, which we have a chance to, that would be wonderful. We also have Coach Ford Chapman, friend of ours, friend of mine. We're going to get Billy Splain in here from PA Football News. These are all in the upcoming 3 to 4 weeks. And we want to do a show that kind of showcases the path that student athletes take to being prepared for high school sports. You know, what do you do when you're 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old? There's AAU, there's club sports, there's academies, there's different kinds of training. And we're going to bring in some 4 men in the Harrisburg area that have been instrumental in helping to train a lot of these kids that we're covering now. They are Archie Smith, Greg Cavoli, Corey Dickerson, and Richard Chinapoo, who's a retired professional soccer Hall of Famer. And then the last thing, and we're not going to give away the names of these people. We haven't confirmed them yet, but there's a brother-sister duo. They play sports at a very high level in this area. They're both still in high school, and they both accomplished a whole lot. And we're going to try to get them to come on together. The brother is entering his senior season. The sister is entering her junior season. So both very accomplished, and we'd love to have them on. So I think I just gave you like 3 or 4, and so we're kind of moving forward here. You know, Luke, you're number 2, buddy. So that's not too bad, is it?
Bottom line on the list, Joe.
Right, you're high on the list. So tonight's guest is a young man who's covered close to 400 sports contests as a broadcaster, reporter, and print journalist. I have to mention that, Luke. You're a very good print journalist. Having just graduated from high school less than 2 months ago. He's got all that in so far. He's a guy whose name and face you've probably gotten to know over the past few years if you cover or if you follow high school sports at all. And that young man's name is Luke Brown. Luke, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited. We're excited to have you on. You and I have worked together, and we see each other quite a bit because we kind of live in the same realm, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
At least for now, until we lose you here soon. We'll talk about where we're losing you to. Not for good. I'm sure you'll be back, but
No, no, definitely back. Yeah.
I mentioned that you've covered. You told me right around 375 contests, but I
hmm
when I said close to 400 because when we factor in the print journalism, it's probably well over 400.
Yeah,
But what
I try
the
to
first thing I want
take
to
care of
ask is,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, you kind of cover all different facets. Um,
hmm
do you enjoy doing it's you do play-by-play analysis, sideline reporting, print journalism? Is this something, do you enjoy them all equally?
Yeah, I think so. I think when I started to get into it, and the first thing that I started to do was play-by-play at Camp Hill, where you mentioned I just graduated from. But sophomore year, I did about 50 games of play-by-play on our Camp Hill NFHS network feed, and then started to get into other stuff. So I think initially I was thinking that I was only ever going to do play-by-play or something on a broadcast, and then I did a lot more print than I thought I would. And yeah, I would say I enjoy pretty much everything that I do equally. I enjoy writing much more than I thought that I would when I got into it, but yeah, I think equally. There's no particular. I think I root for a good game is what I tell people, and
Hmm.
if I get a good game, I'm happy no matter how I'm covering it.
Right. Yeah, we just saw that you released that high school sports. I saw the Mid Penn Commonwealth Division
hmm
preview,
Yeah,
and that was wonderful. I mean, you kind of
thank you,
dotted
thank
all
you.
the I's and crossed all the T's, and it was very extensive. And you worked hard to put that together, didn't you?
Yeah, it was opening ceremonies, and it was just off of media day last week, and I uh, was watching Olympics opening ceremony, and I figured it was as good a time as ever to fire up the laptop and get started on the preview stuff. So there's a lot more that I'm in the works on, but the hardest part of all of it, I think, is just determining who's going to be where because it's hard to look at who's everybody lost and you never know who's the
Right.
hot freshman for Team A and who's the great sophomore for Team B. So I think that's the hardest part. But yeah, I've learned as I go along with the experience, it becomes easier.
Correct. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. You're born and raised in Camp Hill, correct?
Yeah,
The sleepy little town like Mayberry-ish, I guess. Camp Hill,
yeah,
not
right,
not
yeah.
quite Mayberry, but just a real small, very family-oriented town, of course.
hmm
You went to Camp Hill. What do your parents do?
Well, my mom is a school teacher at Eisenhower Elementary here in the borough, and my dad was an IT technician. My dad passed away when I was in first grade, but I think that's where the love of sports came. He was a huge Steelers fan and a huge Orioles fan, and I just kind of started to watch with him. I don't. It was what was on the television, and it just was kind of natural for me to start watching sports. But yeah, my mom's a school teacher at the Eisenhower right up the road here.
Right. So you lost your dad at a young age, but he was still very impactful in your life, and he gave you some things that you'll never forget.
100%.
What about? Do you have any siblings?
I do not. No. Well, I have an older sister who's a half sibling, but she doesn't live in our house. She's much older than me, so she doesn't live in the house anymore. But also a graduate at Camp Hill in 2017.
Oh, you graduated in 2017.
Well, she did.
Oh,
I
she
just
did. Okay.
graduated. Yeah,
Yeah, I
she
thought
did.
you
Yeah,
just graduated. Okay.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. So how did you develop besides kind of tagging along or palling around with your father? How else did you develop a love of sports? I know that you just love the sports. It's not just a job for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I go back to my sister. She was on the basketball team at Camp Hill, and I'm sure you remember as much as anybody else how good Camp Hill basketball was in the late 2010s.
Yes.
With Leah Springer, who ended up with a wonderful career at Messiah, and then who can obviously forget Diamond Bragg, who was at Camp Hill for 4 years, ended up going to Wisconsin and then transferring to Duquesne. Um, at that point, I had already developed a pretty strong passion for sports, but going to those games was huge because I mean the high school, if there wasn't a house right next to me, you could probably see Camp Hill High School from where I'm sitting right
Right.
now. So it's I mean it's right down the road, and go into those games. Went to every single road game. I think I missed one at Steel High in the roller pit because I was sick, and I was mad. I was like, this is the one game that's gonna ruin my streak of going to every game. And then we ended up even going to the Giants Center, I think it was 3 times, winning district titles and seeing the community support. Our boys team was really good at the time too, so going to as many of those games as you could make. Obviously, it's tough with girls and boys, but seeing the passion for the boys team. I was a water boy and ended up as the equipment manager for the football team for a year, and they were good. I mean, we had Michael Schuster and Bill Williams, Zach Kuntz, there. So Camp Hill was really good at when I was growing up, and it's true that people in middle school and especially in elementary school look up to those guys. I mean, they were the idols for me and all my friends at the elementary age. So I think that's where it mainly comes from, honestly, and I think that it certainly helps that it was a high school team that or a high school community that kind of even furthered that passion for sports because why I'm here is because I ended up covering a lot of those games. So I would look at that, I think, is kind of the main thing, not only for sports but also for community sports.
Now, let's just address this. You cover a lot of Camp Hill sports, as you should, but you
Right,
cover a lot of other sports outside of Camp Hill too. What's
right,
it like
yeah.
being that guy, man? That you're kind of like the media dude in the halls of Camp Hill High School. Do people kind of recognize that, and they think that's cool? That they're able to have a classmate that's bringing them the sports contests.
Yeah, I think I hear about the appreciation more from the parents because they get to see everything, but I think and not to say that I haven't heard compliments and appreciation from students as well, but, um, I don't know, I think most of them look at it like their friend that also does this and interviews them and sometimes, especially at media day, like, I'll be interviewing the football team, and I was telling my partner who did it with me, Jenna Wisman, last week, she's a Cumberland Valley grad. I said, "Well, we're gonna be able to do every interview in one take except for Camp Hill football because they're my friends and they like
Right.
to and it's just fun." So it's gonna take multiple takes, but yeah, I think I always understand that the appreciation is there, and sometimes, like, when the boys soccer team wins the state title, that's when I can really feel it from my friends that, like, this is awesome, like, that he's here and that, like I mean, I went on the bus with them to Scranton for the state first round, then they win the state title, and a week later, I'm back on the bus to Scranton for the football state quarterfinal, and,
Mhm.
when I'm doing stuff like that and they're playing really well, and there's a lot of positive things to cover, I think that's when I feel the appreciation the most because they feel like it's making an impact, and they feel like it's the coverage that they're getting is also, just keeping the vibes high, I guess, as they
Right.
would probably say, yeah.
And yeah, you do a good job. You have a good mix of, making sure that you're covering enough Camp Hill, but you also, of course, do a whole lot. You work with Penn Live and some other media outlets as well. Yeah, it's been a good time for Camp Hill sports over the past couple of years. You had state runners up in baseball, champions in basketball, district champions in football last year and your freshman year, right? Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
quad 2A in your freshman and senior years in football, and Camp Hill's a good sports school. I'm not saying that it's kind of an
Yeah.
anomaly, but it ebbs and it flows when it comes to success in sports. And you've just
Right.
been there for a good chunk of years there.
Yeah, yeah, especially, like, my elementary years were really good, as I had already mentioned, and, uh, middle school, there was COVID, but I think they were I mean, I remember in 2020, we went up to, play Loyalsock Township at Shamokin High School, which is all the way up there, out towards Berwick, I think, which is where you make some trips for high school sports stuff, but,
Absolutely.
um but yeah, out in Shamokin, it was the last game that Camp Hill had played. They had lost buzzer beater to Loyalsock Township, and whoever was winning was going on to play Newman Goretti, who was a juggernaut team in the next round. And then, like literally that night, the PIAA stopped all operations of basketball. So
Oh
they were
boy.
good up until COVID, and then
Right.
yeah, I mean all throughout my high school career, there's been a lot of good stuff to cover. So yeah, I think it's a mixture of luck and the success that we continuously produce here.
Right. Now there are big assignments and then big important assignments. Then there are assignments that you really enjoy, and they're not
Mhm.
always the same.
Yeah,
What
right.
was your kind of your first big assignment, big game that you covered?
Well, I'll go back to middle school because right after that loss to Loyalsock Township, and I didn't cover that game. I didn't really do anything in high school sports until my sophomore year. But eighth grade, I started doing I mean, I was on this very platform that you're using to stream with some of my friends, streaming to a live network app called Sportscaster, and we were talking about the NFL and the draft and all of that stuff, and that was a lot of fun. Uh, then eighth grade summer going into ninth grade, we won a contest. We had worked really hard, me and two of my friends, who were just doing this virtually to interview Bob Costas. Excuse me, I got to interview Bob Costas. So that was my first big assignment in that realm. And then where I actually start counting those 375 games that you mentioned, I started counting that uh, sophomore year football season. I was on our NFHS broadcast when Camp Hill had played Big Wheelerville in football. It was a 38-0 game. Um, that's when my official game tally starts, which is now at 375.
Okay.
My first wow, I can't believe I'm doing this is probably the state championships that I started covering. So uh called all eight boys and girls soccer state championships this past November. The first game was, I mean, it's the official PIAA stream of a state
Sure.
championship.
I
So that
was
was
tuning in. You did a great job.
thank you. Yeah,
Hmm.
Central Columbia got a big win, and then the very next game I called Camp Hill winning the state soccer championship. So that day, November 17th, this past athletic season was probably the first wow, this is big time, you know.
Right. And that Camp Hill game was a nail biter too. Were
Double
they were
overtime,
they
yeah.
they were down early? Is that correct?
Yeah, so they had gone down 1-0. They
Yeah.
were down 1-0 at halftime. Ty Kirchhoff scored in the second half, went to double overtime, and then they won off a header.
I watched the whole thing. It was great. It
It
was
was it
really,
was
really good.
it's pretty unbelievable. Richard Lutkins was the guy that had the header, and he'll tell you too. We've been friends since kindergarten, trading baseball cards way back in the day, and in this room, and gone to school for 13 years together. So for him to have the header to win was pretty special.
Wonderful. And let's talk about what game was the most enjoyable, or games. I mean, like I said, I've covered, and I haven't done close to what you've done, but
Oh, sure you have.
I've broadcasted as an analyst or play by play for some district championship football games and some um, deep into the state tournament softball games. But I think that doesn't mean that they were the most fun. Okay, like I think the most fun I ever had was doing a state quarterfinal softball game with Dave Berman at Alvernia College. It was Central Dauphin and North Penn. I just left there gleeful. Have you had any of
Right.
those games? You're just like, man, that was so much fun.
Yeah, number one on the list is the one that we had just gone over with the
Right.
boys soccer. But yeah, there's a bunch, especially this year. I've been really lucky this year, because I'll be honest, high school basketball in this area didn't really pique my interest because I don't have a good answer until this winter. Is like I had heard about the teams of the past in Carlisle. I'm sure you've got some
Right
Carlisle
here.
memorabilia somewhere behind it.
Right
Yeah.
here.
Oh, is
Right.
that the pennant right there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right there. That's
Yeah.
the
So
pennant after their third. They won one more after that. This says
man, yeah,
85, 86, and 87.
I had heard about how loud that gym gets, and CV's had some good teams in the last 3 years that I've covered. And obviously Cedar Cliff girls had a great run, but really I hadn't enjoyed it as much as I thought I would until this year. Carlisle was really good. They packed the gym for pretty much every game, especially the one against CV, and I was right in the middle of it. Um,
Best
but the
basketball
other,
gym in the area, I think. I'm sorry to interrupt
I
you. When
no, no,
those
you're good.
fans are
I
kinda
agree.
clicking on all cylinders and
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
clean, they're fun, they're not doing anything vulgar or they
right.
just know how to be fans. They know how to make a lot of noise. They're choreographed so anyway, yeah,
Yes.
I really like being at Carlisle for a game.
Yeah, and, like, I had heard the stories from veterans. I mean, you had told a lot of, old-time basketball stories from around this area, and I was like, Man, I really haven't seen that." But then, like, Carlisle, Cumberland Valley was really intense,
You
and
and I no,
then
we did Chambersburg, you and I. Chambersburg,
yeah,
Cumberland
against
Valley. Yeah.
Cumberland Valley,
Yeah.
yeah, and then I called the Carlisle Reading game. I think it was yeah, it was state quarter district quarters this year, and I was like, "Oh, this is the old matchups that they're
Right.
talking about. Like, this is what I'm gonna be talking about
Right.
in 25 years," and be like, "Man, this is how like I was there for that." So it really clicked for me, and then I think the best way to sum that up is the 6A state championship. I was the sideline reporter on NFHS Network. I was no more than 20 feet away from Governor Josh Shapiro the whole game, and it came down to the last shot. Parkland had the gym packed. Central York had the other side of the Giant Center packed.
What a game.
You know, it's a big deal. I have Eric Thomas in my earpiece. He's calling the game up in the booth, and I'm down on the floor. The game-winning missed three by Parkland was 5 feet away from me, and, I got into the car and I was like, "That was awesome."
Yeah, that's the
Uh,
kind of thing that you exhale and go, "I can't believe I just
yeah,
had a chance to do that." And how do you
yeah,
like
and
work with
then
Eric?
oh, the best. We were
He's the
just
best.
texting
Yeah,
before I came
I
on
I,
there.
I
Yeah, I mean,
agree.
yeah, he's the gold standard, I think, and he's been a tremendous mentor.
Yeah,
We chat almost every day, so he's a huge
he's the gold
huge
standard. I,
mentor.
I agree with you. I've worked with him a handful of times, and he kind
Yeah,
of brought me in maybe 5, 6 years ago, and we've worked a few times together. But he had faith in me, and I was very inexperienced, and he was very easy to work with. And besides just enjoying sitting side by side with him, I kind of left thinking, after the first couple of times, man, that guy's good at what he does.
yeah, he's
Play by
he's
play in football
incredible.
is no easy task,
No, not at all,
and
and he
his
does it
level of
tremendously.
preparation and you can't really exhale much, when you're doing play by play. So
Yeah,
I would love to work with Eric again sometime, and I think you say the gold standard. That's a great way of putting it. I think he's
yeah,
one of the best we've had in Central PA, and now he's out in Western PA, and that's they've got a good one in Eric, that's for sure.
right, and they care about their high school sports too.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'll give you my last 2 big assignments. Uh, the Bears winning the Calder Cup this year in game 6 of the Calder Cup finals and working the US Women's Open, which he was actually doing as well. I'd worked the first 2 days of the US Women's Open this year as a media guy for the USGA, graduated high school on Saturday, the USGA, incredible people to work for, gave me tickets to go on Sunday. So I went down with Kyle Mace, the son of obviously the legendary Greg Mace. We were walking around. Eric Thomas came up and goes, "Hey guys." And I had already seen him once before, but he's standing on the 18th. Eric Epler then comes up and goes, "Hey guys." So it's all
Right.
four of us watching the winning putt for the US Women's
Oh,
Open was
wow.
pretty special. So yeah, those are I've been lucky this year, Joe, for sure.
Had you ever been to Lancaster Country Club, the,
I I
the golf
had
course?
I hadn't played it, but I was down in Lancaster with my mom. Just a real not much going on in February Saturday. Driving, we went down to a couple shops in Lancaster, and I'm like, hey, I'm working at the country club in May. I'd like to go check it out, walk around just a little bit. It was closed and everything.
Right.
Just walked around because I knew that I was working. But other than that, no. And I mean, it is as advertised.
What a magical place.
Yeah, yeah.
and
It's
and the
it's pretty
players love
special.
it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes, they
they
do. They
play.
are huge fans.
Yeah, they play. Obviously, they play on the biggest stages in the world
Right.
on a weekly basis throughout most of the year. And I've heard some of those star women's players say this is about as good as it gets. One
Yeah,
of the
they
top.
love it there.
Yeah. Anyway, you're off to. I said at the top of the show here that we're going to be
Yeah.
losing you soon. Rowan University in it's South Jersey, Glasgow,
Yeah, Glassboro.
Glassboro. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
The first question I like to ask, and I usually ask the student athletes when I'm interviewing them, but um, why Rowan? What made you
I
choose
went
Rowan?
I've gone to the same sports broadcasting camp for a long time. It's been I think this past summer was my last as a camper and my 7th, 6th or 7th year at this broadcasting camp, and they've got locations all around the country. But this one is at Villanova University, and I've been going, and one of the camp directors is Neil Hartman, who was on Comcast Sports Network for 35 years
Yes.
as a anchor, and gotten to know him really, really well. And he retired from television, and he's the department director of Rowan Sports Communication and Media. So he's there, and I've put a lot of faith in him to run that department, and yeah, I think he does a tremendous job with finding opportunities for students, placing students in jobs after they graduate. There's a lot of tremendous opportunities there. And some of my friends who have also been campers have gone as well because, kind of for the same reasons that I have gone or that I'm going. Um, they have an internship program in the winter to be the broadcast crew for the Delaware Bluecoats, the Sixers G League team. The same with the Washington Nationals High A team in the summer, the Wilmington Blue Rocks, which those are two incredible opportunities to broadcast G League and minor league baseball games in college is huge. Uh, and then obviously I'm gonna broadcast and cover a lot of Rowan athletics and right there on campus. Some pretty special classes. Professors like Mike Quick is one of the excuse me, I'm sorry. Ruben Amaro Jr. and Mike Quick are two of the in-house professors. So they, I think Neil works every day to provide opportunities to students, and that's what I'm about.
Yeah, Mike Quick's a very nice man. I guess you've met him before, right?
I have not yet, no, but I certainly will soon.
Yeah, I met him years ago, and I ended up having lunch with him. And
Oh, really?
man, yeah, it's just a really humble guy, and you couldn't tell except for obviously physically he looked like a football player, and I didn't. But
Yeah,
the way that he kind of interacted with my friend and me, we were on his level for an hour and 15 minutes, and I thought, what a great guy Mike Quick is, and he was actually with Harold Carmichael, so it was my buddy
yeah.
and Mike Quick and Harold Carmichael for lunch and down in Philly, and it was just a blast. So anyway, you told me once before. I asked you what you wanted to do once you got out, like let's call it the real world, and you said you might want to be down in somewhere down in Georgia doing something.
Well, the Masters is big
Right.
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Masters is a big deal. That's the number one event that I want to cover is the Masters.
Okay. Why the Masters?
Mhm.
Just because it's the Masters, right? There's the mystique and
Right.
the
Yeah, I started to really get into the Masters. I was in ninth grade, so before I started doing most of the high school stuff. And in ninth grade, we did like I all my classes were at this desk in ninth grade because you couldn't go in to school to do online. You could like it was COVID and it was
right,
online. So my thought was my grandparents are going down to vacation on the Outer Banks in North Carolina. I could take off one day of school to drive down. After that, I I'll just do school from there, and when I'm done at 2:30, then I'll enjoy some time in North Carolina. It beats sitting here. So
right.
that's what I did, and that week happened to be the Masters. I wasn't huge into golf, but that particular week, it was really close. Will Zalatoris, which he was super new, I think it was his first major, was playing against Hideki Matsuyama. Matsuyama ended up winning by one stroke, and it really clicked. I was like this is intense.
Hmm.
Whereas a lot of people are like, it's golf, it's boring. Like when
No,
you
it's
get
it's
into it,
intense. It is
yeah,
intense.
when you get into it and you're like, if he doesn't make this putt, then he goes down by 2, and that's huge. So when it gets to that point in a golf tournament, it's big. So and obviously the pictures of like just watching on television of this golf course, you're just in awe of the different pictures that you see of the place. It's just absolutely magnificent. So ever since then, I've watched a lot of golf. Masters is by far my favorite event, not only in golf but in sports. And I would be lying if I said that I hadn't taken some more off days throughout the years to watch at least Masters Friday.
Right,
Most sometimes it aligns with spring break, but sometimes I kinda make it align with
right.
Masters break.
So, outside of covering sports, following sports, watching sports, do you have any other hobbies?
Yeah, I dabble in a little bit of not everything, but a lot. Um, yeah, I like to be outside and I like to do different things out when I can, kayak and fish a little bit.
Okay,
I'm a huge
good,
like besides watching golf, I played golf yesterday over at West Shore Country Club.
nice.
So I play as much as I can in the summer and when it's nice out. Uh, a lot some of my friends, a lot of my friends like sports, but some of them don't, and they get me into different activities as well. But um,
That's healthy. That's very good.
yeah,
I'm glad to hear you
right,
say that.
right, yeah. But yeah, I dabble in different things. When I'm with those friends that aren't huge into sports, I'm kind of just like to go along with the guy. I'll just kind of do whatever. So
So, besides covering the Masters, that's only a year. What is your goal? I mean, when you get out of rowing, what kind of job are you looking for? You can't do it all,
yeah,
okay?
right, right. It's a tough
At
question.
least not all at once,
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
don't you know? It's okay if you don't know.
yeah. I don't have a great answer. I mean,
Yeah.
I've always kind of been laser focused on doing play-by-play on either radio or television for a sport that I thought that I liked, but and not that I don't like whatever that sport was. Now, like when I was in middle school, it was like I just want to do football, baseball, basketball, play-by-play. I was
Right.
open to other stuff, but now I'm way more open to other stuff. I mean, I've done the swimming mid-pens and district championships this year, and I still enjoyed that. Like all of it is what I've been telling people recently. The best way to tell you is as much as somebody likes soccer, as much as somebody really likes football, that amount of interest is the amount of interest I have in everything. Like
Mhm.
I want to be involved in every different thing that I can, different roles, different sports, different levels. That's where my interest level is, and, if that means I spend 2 years with this team and 4 years with this network, and then I spend 2 years with this other team, I'm open to that. So yeah, I think that's the best answer I can give you.
That's wonderful. I too have become a lot more open-minded when it comes to some sports that I kind of growing up didn't think were all that cool or fun and I've kind of been forced to kind of open my mind up a little bit because that's what I do now is cover sports. But
Right.
I never really thought there was a line drawn in the sand. I'm old enough that back in the old days, it was either football or soccer. Like
Yeah,
you had to choose one,
right.
even if you weren't playing them. You're a
Yeah.
football fan or a soccer fan. And I was
Mhm.
like you said, you talked about the big three or whatever. I was a football fan, and I became a soccer fan just by showing up. I had a friend of mine whose daughter played. She was the goalkeeper and a varsity goalkeeper. He said, "Hey, do you want to come watch Cassie play?" And I was going to go watch her play. He was a good friend of mine, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, "Oh man, I got to go watch soccer." Uh, I really love it now,
Yeah,
So you
right,
just
and you've
have to
had
kind
some
of be
great
open
teams.
minded. Yeah,
Right,
I've
you've
gotten a
had
chance to cover
yeah,
CD boys and girls.
and
Uh,
they've
the,
both been terrific.
the girls are going to be good again this year. They lost
Mhm,
every year they lose some really good players, but
mhm.
they still
Yeah,
have some really good players left. But it's funny that you said that because most people aren't going to tell you that they like, and you probably enjoy competition. That's probably something to do with
yeah,
that
yeah,
you
big time.
you have such a broad array of. But I asked Fort Chapman one time. Most people know Fort Chapman. Um,
Mhm.
And I forget where we were, but I said, "Are there any sports that you don't like watching? Are there any sports that you won't go out and kind of sit down?" And he said, "Nope." I said, "Wrestling."
I believe it.
He said, "Yep, I'm there." I said, "It's field hockey." "Yep, I'm there." So I'm not quite as far along as you and Coach Chapman are, but I found myself really starting to enjoy a lot of different sports that, and all it is that go put your butt in a bleacher and
Right.
or if it's outside, go grab a yard lawn chair and you know what? An hour and a half, 2 hours later, you'll probably be like, "Wow, that was pretty cool."
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, you mentioned I broadcast and write for Penn Live, and in the fall, Brian Linder texted and said, "How do you feel about covering field hockey this fall?" I had I had been to probably 20 or 25 field hockey games. I had covered one scrimmage at Camp Hill. Um, and I knew how good this area was at field hockey, and
Hmm.
without hesitation, I said, "Absolutely, I'll do it." Um, so until probably time for the state tournament or so, a little bit before that, I was pretty much laser focused on field hockey during the week, football on Friday, and other than that, I was all field hockey. I loved it. It's a sport that I've been watching a lot on the Olympics because we have a lot of local girls playing. Uh, I've gotten to know a lot of field hockey players really well. So then, I ended up getting assigned soccer instead of field hockey for the state finals. So that whole week is devoted to soccer, and I love that. So yeah, you said it perfectly. The best way to just go out and do it is just go. Just don't think about it. Just go.
Did you see what happened with our women's Olympics rugby team today?
I did not.
They won their first medal. I think it was a bronze, but the highest they'd ever finished was fifth. And on the last play of the game, I don't know rugby all that well, but I
Yeah.
think I think Australia turned the ball over. Our woman picked the ball up, ran the whole length of the field,
Oh
scored
gosh,
as
that's
scored as
awesome.
time expired to tie it, and then the free point or the extra point, whatever they call it, they
Yeah.
converted and they won the game, with no time left on the clock. So there's this sport that I wouldn't sit down regularly and watch, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't mind watching that game over.
Yeah, I watched a lot of the men's before the opening ceremonies because they had some games before Friday. Most of them were actually before Friday, and I had watched a lot of them. I learned that a touchdown is actually a try, is what they call it.
In rugby.
Uh, yeah, and then you get the extra two points by kicking it through, which
Okay, so it's
much
two.
narrower up, the much narrower uprights. So yeah, it's certainly an interesting sport. A
That
lot less like football than I thought.
it's uncontested. The extra the 2 points, right?
Correct. Yeah,
They
they
just
they get it all
like
by
a drop. Is
themselves.
it a
Yeah.
drop kick? I think maybe or
Yeah,
no.
drop kick.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's move on to football, high school football this year, 2024. We'll start it with the Commonwealth Division, since I know that you know a lot about it. Did you do those bios or those for every division?
They're coming out. So the
Okay.
Colonial is out. Probably Keystone is coming tomorrow, and then Capital is the last one that I'm gonna do. I'm about to finish picking the games on my spreadsheet.
Where can our viewers, the viewers here tonight, find these?
Best way is through Facebook. So my Facebook is Luke Brown Broadcasting. And there's links all
Okay.
throughout that. And then I'm gonna end up doing an article. The article will just contain all the links to all my preseason content. So that'll kind of be the master post of where to find everything.
Okay. All right. So let's start with Harrisburg, Harrisburg High,
Mhm.
the perennial. At this point, it's perennial. I think they've won three in a row, District Three Class 6A championships, and maybe four out of five. Was it only Central Dolphin that won one in 2019? Well, that would have been no, that would have been before. But anyway,
Yeah,
they're one of the top 6A programs in this
100%.
firmly in the state.
Yeah,
Um, Loaded. This might be their most talented team
I
ever.
think it is. Yeah. And I
Um,
guess since you go
but
ahead.
no, I was going to say they're just not missing much. They have
No,
a,
they're
a
not. They
offensive
returned a
line that
lot.
has matured. They're older now. They're juniors and seniors, most of them. They've got three dynamite running backs. I mean, who has
Yes,
three
they do.
dynamite running backs?
I know,
They
it's it
they
it
they have a wide receiver that's probably going to end up being All American in Elias Koch.
yeah.
I think he's going to be able to probably write his own ticket to wherever he wants to go to play college football. And then, but the question is with Sean Lee, and we don't know if he's going to be eligible or not.
The article just came out on Penn Live at, I think, 6:30, and I'm really glad it came out when it did, and Eric Epler and Dan Sostek collaborated on it, they did a great job. Uh, I'm glad it came out when it did because now it's less of a rumor that we're commenting on and more of a, you know, kind of an official thing now that there's a hearing in front of the PIAA board, but the debate is he eligible because of how long he's been in high school? And that's I the part that I can comment the most on is what's going to happen to the team whether he's there or not. Because I've said to multiple people now, this is a team that can look at a state title. I think because and obviously St. Joe's Prep is always going to be there. The difference this year is that Imatep is bumped up to 6A, so St. Joe's Prep has to go through Imatep charter to get to the state final. If you go through Imatep charter and then you have to play this Harrisburg team, that's a huge test for a St. Joe's Prep team that also has to replace their starting quarterback, which they're going to get somebody. They always do, but yeah, it's not going to be the easy like St. Joe's Prep cruises to another state title. I think this year, and to go back to this Harrisburg team, I had wrote in my article, and by the way, since my article's out there, I can say that I predicted them to go 10-0 in the regular season. They have LaSalle, who has struggled in recent years. Their big game is against McDevitt, and if they lose to McDevitt, then they go 9-1.
Isn't
I
it
think that's
interesting though, Luke, that the probably the Mid Penn Commonwealth Division championship game, unofficial, is the first game of the season, the first regular season game of the. I can't imagine that any of those other 7 teams are going to be in the same class as Harrisburg and McDevitt or McDevitt.
yeah, it is interesting. But honestly, when the Mid Penn schedules these games, I don't know if they're looking at that. I
They
think
can't be.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, they like I'm sure that they feel it's not their place to comment on how teams are going to do because they're the governing body of the conference. So,
Correct.
but yeah, I think it is interesting that it is the first conference game. It's going to be tough for both teams. I think McDevitt goes into that game coming off what could be a close game against Mount St. Joseph. I called their game against Mount St. Joseph last year. Came down to the last snap. Winston
Mm-hmm.
Watkins, who graduated there, he was a senior last year, took the final snap. I think they needed a 40-yard touchdown or so to win the game. It was 20-14, and the quarterback ended up slipping in the pocket.
Oh
He
boy.
slipped and fell on turf. One of the McDevitt linemen came by and just tapped him, and the game was over. But still, it came down to the last play against a
Wow.
McDevitt team that's
Yeah.
loaded. So I don't think it's going to be an easy week one for McDevitt, especially because that game's not at home anymore. It's at York Suburban at the Rose Bowl. I'm on the call for that one again this year.
Saturday, August 31st at noon.
That's the McDevitt Harrisburg game, but
Yeah.
this
Oh,
one's
you're
the
talking
20
about the McDevitt.
Mount St. Joseph.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
no worries. So yeah, Mount St. Joseph. Yeah, on the 21st at York or 24th at York Suburban, and I don't think it's going to be an easy week one for them. And then McDevitt comes in; they host Harrisburg in week two. Uh, but yeah, this Harrisburg team, I even told the guys after I interviewed them at media day, there was 3 of them there, and I said, if there's a Harrisburg team that can compete for a 6A state title, this is the one. So
Yeah, I
I I
agree.
I, I truly believe that.
A little bird told me though that St. Joe's Prep has arguably one of their better defenses ever. So, I mean,
Yeah, they are the definition of reload.
right,
They can do it, and props to them because I don't, honestly, I don't care what state the guys are from. I know that's a big deal that some of their guys live in New Jersey and
right,
Delaware. If if they're interested in playing in Pennsylvania, that's within the rules, and
right,
if they can win, then props to them. Tim
right.
Roken does a great job with that program.
Absolutely. So Central Dauphin, we're going to talk to Coach Glenn McNamee. Maybe one of the more challenging years ever for Central Dauphin. They're very young. They're very
Yeah.
inexperienced. I don't think that their numbers are all that high. So this could be a tough season for Central Dauphin. I only mention them. Of course, I'm a Central Dauphin guy, but I mention them because they're kind of one of the elite programs in the Mid Penn Conference, and I think some of the teams that CD has beaten year in and year out over the last couple few decades even may have a shot at them.
Yeah, I think that I'm looking at where I placed them here on my list. So they're
Seventh, I
7th on
think.
my list at
Yeah.
yeah, at 3 and 7. I think they're losing a lot on the line with Anthony Robzock and Evan Bushong. Um, Both of them are going to Division I schools. Robzock's going to Maryland and Bushong's going to James Madison. Kieran Plummer, I think he's at Wheeling now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Wheeling University. So
No.
Gavin
Lincoln. Is it Lincoln?
Yes, yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's
Lincoln.
Lincoln
Yeah.
University.
Yeah.
Gavin Kirkpatrick is the guy that represented them at media day, so I would assume that's their upcoming starting quarterback. And
Right.
they didn't need him a lot last year because they had Plummer back there, and
Right.
obviously, as we mentioned, Plummer's going to a college to play, so he was obviously good enough to be the starter. Uh, I was interested to see, and I'd be interested when you talk to Coach McNamee, who's great, by the way. Um, I'd be interested to see the decision to play Central York, and I don't know what went into that if that was a prearranged thing, but Central York obviously isn't a bad team, and they're another big school that went toe to toe with them last year. They started the season, they went neck and neck in week 1, and then they ended up playing each other back in district playoffs as well. Um, but that's going to be a tough team, and if if the decision was theirs to make, and they could have taken anyone who's willing to play them this year, then I would have tried to take probably a 5A school or a low 6A school
Right.
that I can beat. I mean, preferably a 6A school that you can beat so you get the power rankings points for it. But yeah, I think that Central York team's gonna be tough, and then it's all conference games from there. I don't remember who I had them getting wins against, but I mean, there's some wins that they
Carlisle, Altoona, maybe Chambersburg. Probably those
yeah, I
three.
think those are probably the 3. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think it is gonna be a challenging year, but with that, I think that they can develop some talent as well.
Okay. So McDevitt and Cedar Cliff move into the Commonwealth. Now there's nine teams in the or 10 teams in the Commonwealth. That leaves some of these Keystone Division programs probably giddy. Okay, like those two were 1 and 2, McDevitt and Cedar Cliff, at least
Mhm. Yeah.
in the recent history of that division. What do you like coming out of in the Keystone Division this year, Luke?
Let me take a look. I like Hershey a lot. I think Hershey returns some pieces, and I say that, but I also want to preface that with the fact that they're losing Angel Cabrera, and Cabrera is was an absolute workhorse for that team. I mean, he rushed for I think over 30 touchdowns last year. Anytime they were inside the 10, he got the ball. But they do get Sweeney back at quarterback, Cameron Sweeney, who's the younger brother of Marcus Sweeney, a wide receiver class of 2022, and the son of Emneko Sweeney, who's
Hmm.
been a long-time coach, athlete, etc. in this area. Um, Daniel Painter has done a really good job rebuilding the talent with that program because they're coming off of a quarterback loss that they had 2 years ago with was it Daniel Painter? Yeah, Daniel Painter. 2 years ago, they end up putting in Cameron Sweeney. He's done a good job. They've got some targets at Hershey that they're going to be able to throw the ball to. So I like him a lot. I think I have them going 9-1. Uh, Against the only game that they lose is the Cocoa Bean Bowl with Milton Hershey in week 1.
Milton Hershey kind of had a down year last year. Have
Yeah,
they
I think
uh,
it's
have they grown up a little bit? Have they some of their talent returning that just kind of wasn't ready to step up last year?
yeah, I think I would be lying if a win for Milton Hershey in the Cocoa Bean Bowl wouldn't be an upset. It would certainly be an upset win. And Milton Hershey finds a new division this year. but they're without Jason Burney, who's their quarterback, and Angel Roberts, who was their top target. So I don't know if it's going to be necessarily a year of growth for that team. Uh, but I think the schedule's a little bit easier.
I think it's worth mentioning too that there's a kind of a huge shakeup with the division alignment.
Right,
The
huge.
representatives huge. I mean, we
Mhm.
just mentioned that two of the Keystone programs would be moving into the Commonwealth, and that's just the least of it. You know,
Oh, yeah, yeah, I think
uh,
a lot of people saw the division realignment. They're like, "Oh, McDevitt and Cedar Cliff in the Commonwealth, that's big." But there's division realignments, and then there's the trimming of 5 divisions to 4, and that's
right.
what happened. So,
No Liberty
I think
anymore.
yeah, that's huge.
And then some of the Liberty teams are going to Tri Valley. Is that correct? Or are
I
they all
think
being absorbed in the Mid Penn?
they're all in the Mid-Penn still,
Okay.
so they're
All
all
right.
most of them, if not all, went to the Mid-Penn Capital Division.
Okay. And let's move to. I don't like to say, the way things are kind of discussed or listed. It's always Commonwealth, which that's obviously the top division, but
Mhm.
Commonwealth Keystone. I don't always think that the Colonial should be talked about last.
Yeah.
Let's bump the Colonial up.
Yeah, they were my second, division preview that came out, and I think for good reason, and they've got a Division I talent to headline that division this year.
Who's that?
Lex Cyrus
Okay, yeah.
from Susquehanna Township.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Susquehanna Township might be in maybe their fourth, fifth year in the. I watched them last year. They played a couple. They had a couple tough losses, but Joe Heaton has turned that program around. There's a lot of energy. I mean, he's a great guy to play for. It's probably not hard to play hard for Joe Heaton. Um,
Yes, if there's anybody that can turn a program around, it's him, so
yeah, he's had some tough, some kind of bad fortune with losing some of his star players. To transfers over the recent years, but I think he's got pretty much most of his guys this year, and he's got them healthy. He's got some athletes. He's got a really good. Refresh my memory. Who's the quarterback? He's a sophomore, right?
it's Torrin Evans.
Yeah, I watched him last year. Boy, is he ever athletic? Well, you got
Yes.
him and Cyrus kind of operating on the same side of the ball. Um,
Yeah, I like those 2 a lot.
so do you like Susquehanna Township to?
Yeah, I like him a lot, and I think their out of conference is well picked. They have Steel High, who's not the same Steel High that we're used to seeing, and then they have Penn Hills from the Whippy Owl,
It's going to be
in
tough.
that York Rose Bowl. Yeah, that Penn Hills games, I think, besides East Penn, that's going to be their toughest game of the year. And I picked Susquehanna Township to go 10-0 because of their schedule and their
Oh
talent.
wow,
Yeah,
wow. So let's go. Let's finish with, and not because they're last of the four, just because I wanted to give the Colonial a little bit of
yeah,
respect and talk about them third. The Capital Division. Is that the
yeah.
one
The
you know
cap.
the most about?
Well, it used to be because I've covered so many Camp Hill games that I've watched so many Capital Division games, but now it's pretty much the Mid-Penn Liberty plus Camp Hill and Steel High.
Right.
Uh,
West
I,
Perry's
I
at the Colonial now, right?
West Perry is in the Colonial,
Right.
so
Okay.
they come in. And by the way, a note on West Perry. Last year, I talked to head coach Bob Bowden. He said that they had like 60 signups for the football team, by far the most ever
Hmm.
in program history. They didn't have enough helmets for tryouts. I talked to him this year and I was like, "Hey, coach, you still got the same amount of interest?" He was like, "No, we don't have the same amount. We have more. We
It's
have more kids that
winning
signed
is
up."
infectious.
Yeah, right. And everybody wants to be a part of that program, and it's really cool to see. They have to replace their quarterback, but I'm sure they can find somebody with 65 kids to replace Marcus Quaker. So
We had him on our show last year, the show that we have coming up here in a couple
he
weeks.
does everything there.
Man, we had he was a great guest. In fact, I'm glad we're talking about him because I got to follow up and try to make sure he comes on again this year. We really had a great chat with Coach Bowden. So who do
Yeah,
you like
and
in
he's
that division?
so yeah. Going back to the Capitol,
Or the Capital? Yeah, I'm sorry.
yeah, I'm finishing out my picks. I have Camp Hill going 7-3, with starting out the season 0-2, which is different than last year. They had started, I think, 3-0. But they've got Lancaster Catholic, and I like the schedule of Lancaster Catholic, the scheduling from Camp Hill, putting Lancaster Catholic on the schedule because it's a 4A team who made it into districts last year. So, and a team that's going to be able to succeed later on. So, if they lose to Lancaster Catholic, and Lancaster Catholic goes on to be like 8-2, Camp Hill gets a lot of power points in the district for that. So it doesn't hurt them as much as a loss to York Catholic does
Right.
because York Catholic is 1A and they are struggling.
Right.
And then they've got Big Spring again. I'm really high on Big Spring this year because they return a lot. They're a huge rushing team and they return a lot of their key rushers. Um, then they get into league play with Susquehanna, Newport, Halifax, Upper Dauphin, Steel Highline, Mountain, and James Buchanan. Those are all wins in my books. The only conference loss that I have Camp Hill taking is Juniata.
Okay.
Juniata is a team that went to the state quarterfinals last year. If it weren't for a really good Sealands Grove team, they probably would have made it even further. And then on the Juniata side of that, to go further, I have them going 9-1, 9-0 in conference, and then that Sealands Grove team that they lost to in the state quarters is the same Sealands Grove team that they play every year almost in week one. So they have Sealands Grove again. I think that they unfortunately lose that game. It was 44-14 last year in uh, in the state quarterfinals. So they weren't necessarily close. And then they go 9-0 in conference, and probably a Juniata team that makes another pretty deep run into playoffs. They're returning a lot. Yeah, I really like Juniata. The rest, that's where it gets a little interesting because it's a lot of Tri Valley schools, as you said. And Steel High. And Steel High is losing a lot. Andrew Irby will tell you himself that that's the team that's losing a lot of talent from last year, and they're trying to replace it. And they've been through this before. They've been through this rebuilding phase as a program, and they're going to 2A in the playoffs. So
Exactly. That's what I was just
yeah,
gonna say. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I think after that, I mentioned that I think Camp Hill can beat 8 of 9 or 7 of 8. Excuse me, yeah, 7 of 8 league opponents. Susquehanna always brings a pretty good squad, but the interesting thing about Susquehanna is they had Augie Glass as head coach. Then they go on to Rick Gibney. I thought Rick Gibney did a really good job last year. His two sons graduate, Drew and Derek, and then they move on to a new coach. So
Hmm.
I'm interested to see how that new coach does there. But coaches have seemed to be able to succeed with the talent that they're given at Susquehanna.
Right. Okay. So thank you for that. That was just a brief overview. So Luke, let's put you back. Let's keep you on the record here before we break this up. Harrisburg, Hershey, Susquehanna Township, and West Perry or Juniata. Who do you have in the? Oh, Camp Hill. Camp Hill.
Juniata.
Juniata. Okay. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So we have
So
Harrisburg Township. Uh, who do we just say?
Hershey in the
Hershey and
Keystone
Juniata.
and Juniata.
Preseason
Okay.
MVPs are Stone Saunders is my Commonwealth MVP. Lex Cyrus is my Colonial MVP. The other two, you'll have to check my Facebook and read my blog posts.
They got to do it, man. I'm glad you held back on the people, on the viewers. You got to go check out Luke Brown's Facebook page, and that is your Luke Brown Broadcasting page,
Luke
correct?
Brown Broadcasting on
Okay.
Facebook. Yep.
So let's wrap this up with a kind of a little bit of something fun here, Luke. Do you know what keeping it light is?
Sure thing. I've
This
watched
is
enough. I've
okay.
watched
All
enough
right.
Joe Gilloway specials to know. Yeah.
Okay, but you've never played keeping it light, right?
I have never been on the receiving end of keeping it
let's
light. Yeah.
let's see if we could just do a couple keeping it. These are questions that are going to have nothing to do with Luke Brown or Luke Brown broadcast. Well, they'll have something to do with Luke, but not Luke Brown broadcasting. Nothing to do with covering high school sports. We're just going to learn a little bit more about Luke here. How about your favorite meal? Let's just say mom says, I'm going to make you whatever you want for your birthday this Saturday, or I'm going to take you out and get you whatever you want. What's that meal going to consist of, Luke?
She's listening on the porch, so she already knows the answer
Okay.
before I say it. But um, grilled sausages with the little cheese in the middle,
Mm,
tater tots, fresh strawberries.
that was that was such a confident, quick answer, man. So
Yeah,
you know what your favorite meal is, right?
yeah,
You didn't even have
yep.
to think about it. How about all-time favorite athlete? Any sport at any level?
Derek Jeter. I want to see if his rookie card.
Man, you can't go wrong with that.
I have his
Derek,
rookie card here.
nice.
But Derek Jeter by far, he was I'm a huge Yankees fan growing up, and he was the guy when I was growing up. So when he retired, I it was pretty rough. I was pretty sad when he
Right.
retired, but he's still involved, which I'm happy about.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. It's going to be the question that nobody once asked, but I think you can handle it. Favorite book?
I gotta look at the bookshelf over here.
Or one that you like a lot. Doesn't have to be a favorite.
Yeah, I will go with Craig Sager's book. Um, and I can't remember the title, but Craig Sager, if you remember, he was a sideline reporter for
Absolutely. Yeah.
NBA on TNT, huge idol of mine, and yeah, he was tremendous. And I talked about being sad when he retired. When Craig Sager passed,
And he
that
was
was
fun too.
extremely sad. Yeah, yeah,
Flashy, snazzy dresser, and yeah,
yeah,
he made
he
it
kept
fun.
it light. So yeah, he
He
kept it
kept it
light.
light. Yeah, he
Yeah,
certainly did keep it light.
but yeah,
Okay,
his book
so
is inspiring.
great. All right. So the last question I'm going to ask you: when you come home on a break from college, will you join us and do some play by play or some
Oh,
analysis?
100%,
We'll have
100%.
everything set up. We'll have this. Just all you got to do is sit down, bring your notes,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah, 100%. I'll be back. I'm trying to
yeah.
stay as involved as I can in the local scene.
Okay. All right. Well, Luke Brown, we wish you well.
Thanks, Joe.
We just went over the hour mark, Luke. So that went well. It went smoothly, and I think we got a chance to learn a lot more about you, Luke. So, just one of the guys I've admired. I mean, I'm 3 times your age. Normally it's people like our age or older that we look up to, and I just admire what you do. I just think you're a
Thank you.
hard worker. I like that you're diverse when it comes to covering sports. You never met a sport that you didn't like to cover, and we talked about that. And you know, I wish you well at Rowan. I'm a phone call away, and when we'll stay in touch. And when you
Yeah.
get back home, you'll sit down with us and cover some sports. How's that sound?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Let's thank our sponsors before we break out here. And once again, Rickabaz Electric. These are Lingelstown Gazette Sports Platinum sponsors. That means that they stick with us all throughout the year. We do have a handful of sponsors who will come in and do maybe just a game or two, but these are the folks that they're kind of our anchors as far as sponsors are concerned. Dan Rickabaugh from Rickabaz Electric, Capital Region Insurance Agency, Payer Apparel. Thanks to Larry Bragg, he provides T-shirts. What size T-shirt are you, Luke?
Usually double X,
How about a Payer
probably.
Apparel T-shirt?
Larry Bragg, he's related to Diamond Bragg, who
It,
spent 4 years down the street playing basketball.
and
Great guy.
Passion Bragg. Passion Bragg had a nice
Passion, yeah,
career too.
Passion was, yeah, she was great back in the day too.
She's a pilot now. Do you know that?
Yeah, she's down in
She
Florida. Yeah.
she flies planes. Yeah. Tonino's Pizza, the Tire Mart, Hoffman Ford, Ted's Bar and Grill, Modern Imprint, Sam Hartley Decking, Freedom Financial Wealth Management, Hershey Abstract Settlement Services, Lingelstown American Legion Post 272, Underdog Sports Bar and Grill, Crystal Bob at Howard Hanna Real Estate, and Team PA AAU Basketball. Thanks to those great local businesses for continuing to support Lingelstown Gazette Sports and our area student athletes. So for Luke Brown of Luke Brown Broadcasting, I'm Joe Gilloway with Lingelstown Gazette Sports, and we'll see you next week for episode 3 of Gazette Sports Chat. Have a good evening, everyone.